The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to our member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SBDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the C2, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre el liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política. Es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo del público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral, que el cierre de brechas que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 135 años para cerrar la brecha entre los hombres y las mujeres. Entonces, nuestro objetivo es que miren el derecho de las mujeres al empoderamiento económico, que el statement "quédate en casa", que es un viejo conocido del patriarcado, no sea que nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
This afternoon's activities in this 42nd round of meeting of experts at Mrs. Seek. We still have to hear some presentations from some countries on open procurement. So we will be concluding in the first part of this afternoon's activities those presentations. So up next is Panama, who will be speaking remotely. Javier Martinez will be speaking. He is the Director General of Public Procurement from Panama. And so if the technical secretary would be so kind as to bring him up on the screen. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Si me apoya con la presentación. Excelente. Buenas tardes, presidente.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, distinguished members, experts of Mrs. Seek. I am Javier Martinez, the Director General of Public Procurement of Panama. Our new administration that took office 1st of July of this year is committed to expanding our public procurement system such that we can safeguard the interests of our country in a head-on fight against corruption. We're going to talk about the tools that we use to fight corruption that we hope to fully implement during this new administration in the area of providing ever greater transparency in our public procurement process. What you see on the first slide are some of the tools that we make available on our portal for procurement. And we are migrating from version 2 to version 3. And once we conclude its implementation next year, we will have the ability to cover all of the different activities in the procurement process for contesting awards, the procurement process itself, as well as new processes such as reverse auctions or tender. And this right from planning right through the awarding of contracts and the execution of the contract. We have different formats that are used internationally that can be used through our system. The next tool that we make available on our platform is the Digital Public Procurement Observatory called Panama Compra en Cifras, procurement in numbers. It provides all the information relative to public activities, enabling users to find all the information they need, broken down by type of process from 2006 up till now, including data from local governments. This platform is Panama Obras, Public Works. This provides information on all public works projects. Can be found on this portal with data that is fed into it from all of the participants. Now, all of the bidders who take part in public tender processes have access to this. Lastly, and despite the fact that this isn't up on a slide in my presentation, but it's still worthwhile mentioning, is our virtual library, which gathers all of the awards or rulings issued in the procurement process, as well as ultimately we will be including rulings from the court, case law on public procurement for reference purposes for any interested party. It used to be that such information was not loaded onto a system, but now it is, and so now it can be accessed in one place, one-stop shopping. Also, the verifying commissions or commission is a part of this. We seek to ensure impartiality of these commissions. Now, in this procurement system, we have a database made available, and we've enhanced the impartiality of the system whereby one can confer everything relative to awards offered. Another aspect that we have been working on to fight corruption, in addition to the open procurement process, are standardized documents to facilitate the procurement process and to handle the files. The public procurement body has received these certificates, ISO 9001 and 3700. We are going to expand this to include the entire institution. In our maintenance process, we've been working on updating the public procurement law to make it more nimble, efficient, transparent, traceable, to promote greater participation from throughout the country. And we are striving toward a situation in which 100% of proposals are submitted electronically. On our platform, we have our virtual training center to train and professionalize everyone who takes part in the system, and it's made available online for free. We have online quote site for amounts under 10,000 balboas. That wasn't possible before. Now it's made public, it's visible. You can see what the quotes are, and this has enabled us to save money. This morning, I heard Chile and the Dominican Republic as they spoke about artificial intelligence, and we are applying AI in public procurement. In the short term, we have enhanced the user-friendliness of our portal, making it easier on the eyes, so to speak. In the midterm, we are going to put together a compendium of information that can be found on different web pages to avoid duplicity of state and duplication of other state expenditures. We're going to be reviewing the information on that website, and making it easier to ascertain the veracity of the information. We're following through on the annual plans of public procurement such that the projects be worked into the annual budgetary process. We have an annual procurement plan for each one of the government institutions, and through this we are going to have greater transparency in the different projects of each entity. Now, something else that goes along with the procurement to endow it with greater transparency, there should be the political will to do this correctly and to enhance the structure, better oversight of the powers, branches of government. And decisions made should be made by career judges and not by politicians. The administration seeks to enhance the country and to enhance the transparency, to protect whistleblowers, to enhance the standards governing public administration. And as our president said in his inaugural speech, both the private sector and the government have to come together to enhance this system. It falls to all of us to enhance our procurement process through different tools, laws, initiatives, and there has to be will, public will, buy-in. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So our president is an ally in this process, making available this timely, publicly accessible information for public procurement, bringing citizens on board in this process to enhance its efficiency. Thank
Muchísimas gracias al experto de Panamá.
I thank the expert from Panama, Mr. Javier Martinez, for sharing Panama's experience. Now we're going to hear from Peru. We would like to know if Peru is in the room, or rather online, because we will also be hearing from Peru remotely. Mr. Jackson Nils Mogrovejo Pastor, who is an advisor to the executive presidency of the oversight body for state procurement. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, experts. Today I'd like to talk to you about some of the experiences and developments and different activities we've carried out by way of opening up our procurement process to prevent corruption. And to do so, I'm going to start talking about our electronic procurement system, through which we conduct a procurement nationally. And I will be addressing some of the best practices that we've implemented. We protect sensitive information on our database. We also manage the different roles of the users of our system for privacy purposes. Now, our search engine enables people to have ready access to the information available on the system. We have an annual procurement plan which contains general information about that procurement, which is slated to be carried out by each one of the state agencies. There's also a public procurement search engine that enables anyone to find information about any procurement process that's underway, no matter what stage it is currently in. They can learn about the public tender process, the competitive process, the auctions, direct hires and acquisitions, and others. Now we have another search engine for contracts where you can find information on contracts and everything relative to those contracts right through to final execution. Extensions of deadlines and so forth, and other information relative to these contracts. Next. Another public search engine that everyone has access to is the digital book that contains all of the information about events and activities that take place as a part of the execution of a public works project from the outset until its conclusion. We have the public procurement open procurement portal. There are annual procurement efforts, over 50,000 a year, that are repeating year by year. That $14 billion a year is what is spent on those yearly occurring procurement processes, and that information is available through our open procurement portal. This application, just as Oscar Hernandez told us about this morning, and those who helped us put this system together, this enables us to see the data, no matter what stage the procurement process is in, to download the data. Interact with the system through different features that have been set up in this. As you can see in this graphic, how this data is being brought into line with international standards, and this is readily accessible information through this platform, public information. These are Excel, CVS, XISX files, and others. And this data can be accessed that way and used. Another tool we've implemented starting in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, is the provider information sheet, fact sheet, with information about a given, all given providers have fact sheets about them that you can find here, that's fed by the customs system and tax system, which provides information about the type of business it is, what its background is, its experience, and how it has substantiated its experience, and the different procurement or public tenders it has taken part in. An important feature of this tool is that it offers alerts, alerting providers of opportunities, of tenders. It's updated on a regular basis according to the availability of information from a host of external sources. Here, you can see all of the state agencies whose information feeds into this provider fact sheet. And you can see the different sources of information, the different types of information that are made available here. You can also learn about what impediments there may be to taking part in some of these tenders, what the provider's past performance has been, their past experience, and their legal standing. Within these entities, just to give you an example, we have the Comptroller's Office of the state that provides information about financial disclosure, provides disclosure statements made by contractors that contract with the state to avoid any conflict of interest or anything else that's barred by law. Next.
Actualmente venimos.
We have been working on the implementation of new, smaller procurement methodologies. This application allows us to better manage small-scale procurement endeavors, requiring fewer than 8 units. And this allows us to send out requirements and notifies all registered vendors as to tenders, and through this web app we can also bring greater transparency. Next slide, please. Next. We're also using a public search tool where citizens can look at all of the procurement processes that the state has undertaken. Next, please. So I've put up some examples here so you can see the kind of information that is made transparent and that citizens can go out of their way to find. Next, please. I wanted to close by mentioning our National Open Data platform, where we publish information, data, that's compiled as part of our state initiatives through our office of the Comptroller and our National Registry for Vendors. We have our contractors. All those who have been debarred can be seen there as well. Sanctions, penalties, annual procurement plans for all contracting bodies, procurement, RFPs, contracts that have been awarded, what contracts are currently taking offers, and, to close, the list of individuals that are involved in this system. Thank you very much. Thank you so much to our expert from Peru, Mr. Jackson Nil Mogreovello, consultant for the executive presidency, for having shared with our committee of experts your experience in open procurement. We will now give the floor to Suriname. Suriname will now deliver...
Sí.
The expert from Suriname has brought me some clarity. So we will give the floor now to our expert from the state of Uruguay, Madam Gabriela Mendiguibel. You have the floor, Madam Expert. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, some of the concepts that I've put here, what I did with this presentation was transcribe the article of the convention. Yes, the article of the convention making reference to our theme of discussion today. Essentially, this is a suggestion by states to keep, maintain, and strengthen public procurement systems for the contracting of goods and services, and This would be done by public officials. This is what we are all aware of, and this is what acts as the raison d'etre for our meeting. Now, this morning, we quickly got into discussions about what happens with acts of corruption, the amount of money involved. That's why regulation is so important, and that there's a double-sided cost. There is the economic cost, the amount of resources that have to be that are eaten up by paying out bribes, and there's another cost, which is a cost of trust in a political system. And inefficiencies in public fund management causes everything to be more expensive, and quality goes down in services and goods that are being procured. We highlighted the importance of three things: strengthening the policies of accessibility of information. We've been talking about that all day, having open procurement. We have to respect international guidelines and standards in this regard, and we have to train and adopt new instruments in this sense. I'm really impressed with artificial intelligence and seeing how the states have presented truly innovative endeavors. I think it's so interesting, not just because of my lack of experience in that particular area. I found it fascinating. Concerning the tools that we could use to eradicate corruption, I've written here the guiding principles that are part of the TOCAV, a text that we make use of in Uruguay that sort of governs our procurement process, and the public e-procurement system that many countries have mentioned. And in this regard, what I've done is mention the different bodies and regulations that we have in Uruguay. I thought it might be interesting to show you all this, just like other states have done. We want you to know who our authorities are. We have our state purchasing regulatory agency. We have our TOCAF, which is the text I mentioned previously from 1997 originally, and it was updated in 2012. There are also pre-established principles and comptrollers' offices that help us deal with all kinds of matters pertaining to formality and protocol, I guess. And then we have the RUPE, which is the single registry of state providers or vendors. So if you want to contract with the state, you have to be on this list. Obviously, this is a huge asset to our comptrollers. What progress has been made in the area of open procurement? We've had some regulatory changes. First off, you have to publish information pertaining to all procurement efforts, whether that's for goods or services, online, on the website, and that helps to standardize everything. So all state bodies have to publish those opportunities on our website. There are new tools that have allowed for greater transparency and traceability. There's the RUPE, like I mentioned, the framework conventions. We have annual purchasing plans, among other mechanisms that are present in this space. And something else that I think I picked up on from other states is the performance by the provider, which is really important. It allows us to, I guess, reward good behavior, you might be able to say, and punish poor behavior in this context. Progress in terms of open procurement. We have a website for state contracting and purchases. Again, everything has to get put up online. The body that is looking to procure, the thing that they want to procure, etc. And then you have the conditions themselves, which establish I guess, predetermined conditions so that the process is as transparent as possible. We have a data catalog, which is published on a monthly basis. We get data that is extracted from the RUPE, and here I've copied the link. I've done that for both instances. If you share this presentation to the other states, then they might be able to click on here. We also have the ARCE, which does the same. Here I have a screenshot of a page on the RUPE website. You can see the updated information on state contractors, and again, this is updated on a monthly basis. The same thing for historical purchase data, where we have information on purchases made on an annual basis. At our department, we use this information to look at irregularities, we can look at technical prowess, we can look at purchases made, and we get really useful information to help identify potential corruption cases. We also have a web observatory for public procurement. There's ARCE, which I had mentioned previously, with the link at the bottom. So, transfers and management of state-led procurement initiatives can all be found here, and the citizens of a country can make use of this tool as well to learn about those cases. Here's a screenshot for our portal from the Public Procurement Observatory. So when I read the initial tender, the RFPs, I often ask myself, okay, well, where do we stand, and where have we made improvements? Where are there still needs to be met? And I have been working in our procurement comptroller's office, understanding to a greater degree the whole life cycle of a procurement process, right? It's not just a matter of purchasing a good or service. You have to look at what's going to happen after you are delivered the end result. And that is all part of a much larger system or process. That's why you have to evaluate the performance of your contractors. What kind of behavior or results will garner repeat contracts? Another project that we've thought about is redesigning the virtual marketplace, where people can scale their businesses into an e-commerce type of structure. We have a catalog of goods, services, and public works. We want to redesign that catalog. One of the members of the panel this morning was highlighting that Argentina, well, not to use it as an example per se, but that we needed to strengthen this concept. And I think that citizen participation in building or designing requests is absolutely necessary. That's how citizens can be more involved. And there are 3 projects currently underway. We have electronic RFPs, e-evaluation of bids, and then contract management. How can we reduce times needed to carry all of this out? How can we be more objective with the criteria that we use in our conditions? Maybe that's something that we can look at. And just to wrap up, here I've got some different options in terms of solutions that one might consider. Some have proposed that we develop oversight tools and tools for evaluating performance. we've been able to identify 5 differentiated axes. You have cross-cutting oversight, performance evaluation instruments, maturity measurement, maturity measurements, risk analysis and management, and the evaluation of impacts brought about by public policy. That is the whole of my presentation, and naturally we are more than happy to answer any further questions you may have. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Gabriela, our expert from the state of Uruguay, for her presentation. I will now take this opportunity, before we wrap up, is Ecuador or Belize online? Can the Secretariat let us know? Is Belize there? Is Belize online?
Belize, sí.
Belize? Very well. Belize is online, meaning that we will give the floor to the expert of the state of Belize so that they might deliver their presentation during our special session on open procurement. Welcome. You have the floor. Mr. Carlos Ross. Cesar, apologies. How are you, Cesar?
Estás en silencio, si es posible.
Your mic is muted. Would you be able to please turn it on?
Muchas gracias.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, President Dr. Berenice, colleagues. My apologies for not being there. And we were hoping to have the Contractor General herself do this presentation, but she just left for her 3rd meeting for the day. So I will have to do it and hope that I do a fairly good job of it as such. No? One of the first things we want to point out is that it wasn't until 2020 that we got an administration that began to seriously act on onboarding all of the policies and the recommendations that both MESISIC and UNCAC had proposed for years. And so in short, we have developed a proposed or a draft procurement law, but we don't have an active one at this point in time. No? And so what the procurement and contracting process does, it has developed a sort of policy guidelines that come from the implementation of international best practices from all the international financial institutions that we work with. We have been able to select and put together a sort of guideline of these best practices. And so the Office of the Contractor General was established to ensure the functions of impartiality, making sure that contracts are done in merit and without fraud, corruption, mismanagement, waste, or abuse. Why is it important that we practice open contracting? Well, open contracting ensures transparency at all stages of the procurement process, from planning to contract execution. It promotes public access to procurement information, helping to prevent corruption, and it guarantees an objective, transparent, and evaluative process that reduces opportunities for unethical practices. Next slide, please. The reasons for pursuing open contracting to prevent corruption: it allows for public scrutiny. It ensures that officials are held responsible for decisions, reducing opportunities for corrupt practices. It allows for the making of or accessing of information to all. It discourages favoritism and biased decision making. It increases transparency, limits the chance for fraudulent contracts or inflated practices. It allows citizens to gain confidence in the government's procurement process through open access to information, and it aligns with international anti-corruption standards. We do want to point out that when this process began to be implemented, the majority of contracts were either limited or selective tendering. Since earlier this year, the Office of the Contractor General did a sort of self-study, and they found out that about 45% of public contracts now are open contract, which is much better than where we were before, but we know that it's still a distance to where we have a much more reliable process. Limited and selective tendering now should only be used when open tendering is not feasible. For example, when there's an extreme urgency, or when an open tendering process was done but no bids were received. And apart from that, Parliament has guaranteed that any contract has already passed in the Audit and Reform Act that any contract above 5 million beliefs has to go to open contracting, to open tendering and such. So public, the next slide, please. All right, the methodology for open contract that is now practiced is there is a prepared documents that are straightforward, publicly available, and easy to understand. It's advertised widely on accessible platforms, CARICOM procurement portals, newspapers. It's required to advertise in at least 2 local newspapers and then the ministry or department websites. All potential bidders receive equal access to information with questions and clarifications made public. Conduct bid openings in a transparent manner, recording all details and making them publicly available. Form unbiased committees, free from conflict of interest, to evaluate bids using predefined transparent criteria. And we select bidders that offer the best value for money, considering both price and quality. Right? And it's important to point out that there are several procurement officers throughout the government, and they help to guide the procurement process, including giving orientation to small businesses, because we know that in these processes, small businesses are the ones that usually feel not competent enough to bid, right? And so there is a process to sort of prepare them for bidding, okay? Where challenges in implementing open contracting. Next slide, please. Where challenges in implementing open contract occur. One, some challenges are involved in unfair implementing insufficient monitoring, right, of the process may allow manipulation or misconduct to go unnoticed. Resistance may hinder the adoption of open and transparent processes. Smaller or less experienced firms may find it difficult to participate due to complexity of procedures. And as I've suggested, procurement officers in the different ministries do their own orientation with these small and less experienced firms to make sure that they come up to mark, get up to scratch in preparing and submitting bids for contracts. Ambiguous evaluation criteria can allow for biased decision, undermining transparency, and a lack of public awareness or participation can reduce the effectiveness of open contracting. Okay. And the next slide, please. Okay. So what are the expected results of open contracting to prevent corruption? One, the processes used are ensured, or we're making sure that public access to procurement data reduces the chance of corrupt deals, and it builds trust within the public. Accountability mechanisms prevent manipulation and unethical practices at every stage of procurement. And we want to clarify that where there is questionable, all contracts before being offered out has to go to the contractor general for her to review the process and such, no? And where the revision there is any questionable part to the revision, it's resent back to the relevant ministries for them to resubmit that offer, republicize that offer for other contracts to occur. So a transparent process encourage more bidders to participate, reducing favoritism and creating a more competitive market. Open contracts encourage cost efficiency and minimize overpricing or misallocation of resources. Citizens are more likely to trust the government when procurement processes are transparent and fair. And transparent terms lead to better monitoring and ensuring that suppliers meet contract obligations. And I want to conclude with saying that the Contractor General, the Financial Secretary and his procurement officer, and myself have been meeting regularly to prepare the draft Procurement Act to ensure that it meets the standards, the international gold standards, one can say. And we are preparing that to submit to Cabinet, the executive arm of our government, and then subsequently, hopefully, have it before the end of the year and taken to Parliament to make into a law. And such, no? Okay. Thank you.
Muchísimas
Monitoring
gracias.
open contracts.
Thank,
Muchísimas.
thank you very much to our expert Cesar Ross from the state of Belize for having delivered his presentation and to talk to us about his experience in public procurement or open procurement. Finally, we have a presentation from the state of Ecuador, which will also be delivered virtually by expert Maria Jose Carvajal Ayala.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Can someone let me know if they can hear me all right? Okay. Thank you so much. Now, third time's the charm. Thank you so much. We were experiencing some difficulties this morning, but we're finally able to present what we've been working on, our progress in open procurement. Our National Service for Public Procurement has been actively working on implementing projects that are focused on public procurement open data sources in order to give our citizens tools that will lead to spaces for them to improve on transparency, accountability, and procurement processes carried out by the state. In this sense, to improve the public procurement space in Ecuador, we are working on integrity and transparency as one axis of action, and another one being participation from our citizens and social oversight. Now, concerning integrity and transparency, our open data platforms are crucial. This is what allows our citizens to access information in real time on procurement processes carried out by the state. As we've heard time and time again today in other presentations as well, evidence and experiences throughout the region and international studies show that the more information you have available, the better decisions we get to make, and we're able to better collaborate with civil society, journalism, the academic sector, etc. We have two main platforms for open data sourcing. We have Contrataciones Abiertas Ecuador, which is open procurement for Ecuador, which was launched on December 15th of 2021, and Public Procurement en Cifras Lanzamiento, which is from 2022. We've been able to strengthen our national system of public procurement platforms this way. Our citizens can literally see in the palm of their hands how public procurement is being carried out from the state. You can look at data generated at each of the stages, all the way through to the amount of participation that you have from public procurement representatives, as well as GDP influence and what the state's general budget is. Next slide. Contrataciones Abiertas Ecuador, the platform from 2021, is part of Ecuador's National Action Plan for procurement. We have worked with our partners to improve this platform and the information available. This is the first time that our country has a standardized platform that is aligned with international guidelines in this regard. We bring greater transparency to the entire public procurement cycle this way. On this platform, we have information from more than 2 million public procurement processes. We have visual graphic data and other kinds of information that allow us to gain greater clarity on the public procurement process. We also simplified the search tool so that people can use this platform more easily to find details on procurement processes carried out in Ecuador. For data management, we have modules that allow for mass data downloading in different formats. You can also do online searches for other kinds of digital devices.
So I invite you to take a look at our platform. Now, the other platform that we have is public procurement in numbers. This is a business intelligence platform enabling us to analyze the information relative to procurement, such that you can quickly and on a timely basis learn about the main trends and indicators of the public procurement market, as well as to consult or search information at the different phases of the procurement process through different charts. You can clearly come to understand what the market's behavior is, to better understand the dynamics of the market and the different aspects of the process. Public procurement in numbers is the key ally for the contracting agencies, and also to see what to help them put together the annual procurement plans and to take stock of inventory on these platforms. We've had more than 98,000 visits last year. Next. Through this QR code, you can visit the platform. Accessing these two platforms can be done directly through CIRCOP or from our webpage. Social oversight and citizen engagement, working with the Presidency of the Republic, we have been working on issuing a number of executive decisions to strengthen citizen engagement and oversight of public procurement, lending legal certainty to the citizens' participation and engagement in the social oversight of different stages of procurement. This includes creating tools to access information and to strengthen or making the tools for accessing this information more user-friendly. We have different platforms that foster greater citizen oversight and transparency. There are many civil society organizations, foundations that use open data that we have made available through our platforms, and they can cross-check information, analyze information. We have one project, for example, who is behind the scenes. The different organizations on the screen. Red Flag Alerting Organization, another organization in Quito that looks into weak spots, vulnerabilities. And all of this was made possible, this engagement of civil society was made possible because of the making available of this information. And so this encourages active engagement and oversight of how public funds are spent. The National Integrity project, and a cup is another project we have in which we use technical means to reach outreach for the public, and we have been enhancing public procurement thanks to their contributions, working with public and private sectors, with the academic sector, to further flesh out this topic. We've also strengthened the citizen observatory mechanism to assist in staying abreast of different procurement public tenders and procurement processes. Lackathon, Datathon is another outreach program which is broadly used in managing public procurement, engaging the public, and asking the public for suggestions by way of improvement. And we see great engagement through civil society and academia. This open source of data is used for further enhancements. We have a report system, thereby complying with making available secure whistleblowing channels so that any type of anomaly can be people can blow the whistle on these anomalies either privately or publicly as they choose. This further enhances transparency in the public sphere. We conclude stressing that the National Public Procurement Service, SURCOP, is fully aware that through making these platforms available, we will enhance the quality of this service, as we've already done, and further disseminate information so that we can create greater collaboration involving all of the different parties involved in public procurement, allowing anyone to offer suggestions and alternatives based on empirical information and the data made available through our platforms. And so key in this process was bringing the citizens on board. We want always to put citizens front and center in the procurement process, and also working hand in hand with national initiatives that work toward the same goal. Thank you. I think Maria Jose Carvajal Ayala, who was the technical coordinator of operations.
Siendo así,
well, we've reached the end of the session for state presentations on open procurement.
a los fines de iniciar
Now we're going to launch into best practices, but before we do that, just a 5-minute break. And please come back immediately after 5 minutes so we can jump right into the best practices session, if you agree. If not,
o como ustedes deseen.
as you prefer. Do you want a 5-minute break? A 5-minute break, and then come immediately back, and we'll jump right back into the next session. Oh, we're going to continue. Okay, well, the Committee of Experts of MESASIC has decided to move straight into the best practices session, which we will do right now at this 42nd session of the Committee of Experts of MESASIC. Now, for this session, just as in the prior session, there will be 10 minutes allotted for each presentation, and the Department of Conferences will, as they did last time, put up a timer for people to keep track of their time. Those taking part virtually, just to say that this session is going to be broadcast through the OAS webcast system, as well as through Facebook and YouTube, just as we did for the last session, given how important this session is for all states. So let's start this session of best practices. The Secretariat received the best practices questionnaire or form from the following countries: Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Guyana, Haiti, Mexico, Panama, Dominican Republic, and Trinidad and Tobago. Well, there's a special request before I give the floor to the first speaker, and with Argentina's agreement, I have a special request by Panama that has the predicament of not being able to wait until the end to speak, and is requesting to be moved up and be the first to speak. So I give the floor to Panama, who is going to talk to us about best practices. Mr. Venega is here to speak, and we give the floor to hear that presentation about best practices from Panama.
Muchísimas gracias a todos, señora Presidenta.
Thank you all. Good afternoon. I am Ms. Venega, the first secretary and charge affairs of the Panamanian mission at the OAS. Good afternoon to all of the members, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Now, it's an honor for us to be able to address you on the occasion of this 42nd meeting of Committee of Experts to share with you best practices on the fight against corruption carried out by the different institutions that are comprised by the interinstitutional agency of a follow-up on corruption in Panama as a first good practice. Pursuant to the American Convention Against Corruption, Panama has implemented as preventive measures as called for by the convention in Article 3.1, standards of behavior for the proper operation of public servants, and there being a system to ensure that this happens, to ensure that the electoral duties are fully carried out appropriately, that there be a code of ethics, and that people make the proper use of the funds for the electoral process pursuant to our electoral code. Now, regarding public entities who need to fully understand what their responsibilities are and what the ethical norms they have to abide by are, the Accounts Tribunal has a training program for investigating and investigating into acts of corruption, and they shared their experience in the independent fight against corruption in order to provide public servants engaged in this process in the fight against corruption, endowing them with the tools and the international instruments and the other means with which they can effectively fight this social scourge. We have the financial disclosure statement that all civil servants have to fill out. And training is offered to bring people up to speed on the investigation techniques. Furthermore, the Superintendency of Insurance of Panama also developed a web page providing services and information on money laundering and the financing of terrorism, corporate governance, for which there are specialized courses made available to boards of directors and top-line personnel in companies, so to ensure that everyone be properly trained so they can identify the risk of money laundering or financing of terrorism, such that we can now conduct a more thorough and sound assessment of risks. Another good practice is training for civil servants together with the Embassy of the U.S. as well as with the judiciary, training that seeks to foster a culture of prevention, to localize financial crimes, money laundering, asset laundering, making available to all the participants of this course the necessary knowledge so that they can adopt preventive measures should they, and also trigger investigations into any untoward activity. We've also created an office for access to public information and access to judicial information as a good practice to promote a culture of transparency across the whole of government, public servants, and then judiciary, mostly for citizen participation to enhance client or customer service, and also the operators of the courts. Another measure, another oversight body of the Ministry of Government, we have the technological, we bolster our transparency tool, electronic tool, which enables keeping a registry of the movements of documents. It's a file system that allows for more effective and timely processing of cases, to streamline processes, to enhance coverage, quality, and customer satisfaction with the services that they receive, allowing for greater transparency and traceability of processes, all of which are important for our institution to actually ensure transparent and effective public administration. We have the General Comptroller's Office of the Republic of Panama, which is another state oversight body which has implemented the electronic system for accountability, which is a platform designed for keeping track of transactions carried out by civil servants and agents charged with handling and managing funds and public goods. This has been implemented in communal boards for accountability purposes, providing information on a timely basis and also facilitating the administrative functions of these boards. Panama has also rolled out an open government mechanism to encourage citizen participation. We have the virtual chain of ethics to raise awareness among citizenry and other government offices about open government as a tool that can be adopted by government agencies, as well as to promote citizen engagement, drafting together public policies that would redound to more effective public administration. Here, Panama, I would say, has 5 national action plans of open government in which we have taken on commitments that have enhanced public administration, and the beneficiaries of this improvement are citizens. The Office of Citizen Engagement and Transparency and Good Governance of Cities, 26 different municipalities, some of the largest ones in Panama, are a part of this citizen engagement effort, enhancing transparency at the city level, rolling out community programs and plans to serve the community. Because when a citizen takes part in decision-making, as you all know, that instills trust in citizens that their government is trustworthy, integrity. The citizen comes to trust government better, which leads, in turn, to better public administration. Now, it's been very important to strengthen ties of international cooperation and availing ourselves of assistance offered internationally so that our country could face the challenges, to overcome the challenges it faces most effectively. That's why the General Accounts Prosecutor's Office cooperates with the Comptroller's Office. The Accounts Office that is, all the parties involved in investigation have been a part of a training process, training courses offered internationally on handling public funds located abroad. These are agreements that were signed on to of cooperation among states so that we could eradicate this scourge that besets us all. I thank everyone for giving us this opportunity, and we stand by to answer any question any expert might have, and we're happy to share the contact information of all the different experts and entities should you need or desire to learn more about our best practices. Thank you. Ms. Venega of the Permanent Mission of Panama. Thank you for that presentation on best practices. Next, in alphabetic order, we give the floor to Argentina. So we're going to hear about Argentina's best practices. Janina will be speaking. Thank you very much. I'm Deborah Harford. Just to set straight who I am. She works a lot harder than I do. That's why she's asked me to read this. I'll do my best to make up for the fact that we skipped our coffee break. So Deborah's the expert. So that said, when we decided to take part in the panel of best practices, I just want to share with you what we thought about that and what we understand a best practice to be, and why we wanted to bring these best practices here to this meeting. Now, good practice, a best practice is one that has some features, characteristics that make it actually practical because it is or has been implemented, and good because it's actually produced results. A good practice, as we see it, is something that inspires, and the one we will share with you today is one that we adopted, and we took it following the example of Mexico's good practice in this area. After a meeting we held with our counterparts, Mexico presented on their integrity standard, and we thought about doing something along the same lines in the private sector during the full swing of the pandemic. And so, again, good practice should be inspiring, and that's what inspired us. We were inspired by Mexico's example. Now, it should be practical, not just to tell you about how useful this was for my country. It does have other elements that other countries might find also useful and worthwhile to actually implement in their own states. So it's replicable, it's adaptable, in addition to being inspiring, because we all have our own legal systems and our own mechanisms. We all have our own scarce resources, scant resources, far less than what we need to do what we need to do. But that said, a good practice adapts to a country's needs. And so it inspires, it can be shared, and it could be adapted, and it actually is effective. It meets a need. Now, this under the prior administration in Argentina was when this started. There's been a turnover of government since then. This has since become a state practice. So started over the last administration and continues until now, which is another feature of a good practice. It's lasting. And it enhances transparency. It becomes a good practice for that reason, and that's why it's worth our sharing it with you. Now, let's move on to our presentation. Sustainable integrity as a bridge between the public and private sectors. We knew that we had this as a mandate. We didn't really know how much we had to do. So how can we bring the private sector into the fold, into this discussion with the public sector to talk about best practices, how to inspire them to talk with us and to understand that they are part of the problem and thereby of the solution. And so that's another thing that turns this into a good practice, the fact that we're sharing it with you here. And this is a multi-sectoral approach against corruption. Corruption is a complex phenomenon. It needs to be addressed blank-wise, accordingly, from all of its dimensions, from all angles, and the different sectors have to be involved in this process. Something else that was very important, as we saw it, and that also makes this a good practice, is that it emerged within what the framework of what conventions call upon us to do, what we are bound to do by these mechanisms. In 2018, we had to enact a law of legal certainty, which was how we were able to keep its status according to the UN Convention, the OAS Convention, which also drive us to come up with a law to resolve conflicts. And that's what this law is, 27401, which provides for punitive measures to be applied. This law also calls for or provides, by way of prevention, exactly what I'm going to read to you now. It provides for the different elements that an integrity and transparency program ought to have, because a company that has such a transparency and integrity program reaps benefits according to what is provided by this law. Now, the criminal liability, that is rather being exempt of criminal liability when one reports oneself. In blue, the most important part is a requirement in order to bid or take part in public tenders by the state, and a certain threshold for the amount involved is established also by this law. So how can we help the private sector to bolster its integrity program? Because starting with this law, everyone was going to be bound by this law. And what is the state going to do to encourage those companies that did not yet have such integrity programs, those that are publicly listed, that have their own compliance systems by virtue of being publicly listed. But you have those that don't have the wherewithal to do it, that aren't publicly listed, and they need it for there to be, to receive assistance by the state, for them to understand what the compliance system is and how they can comply with these rules. And that is what gave rise not only to what the law provides for. It provides a description of the integrity program, but we approach this from a broader perspective yet. So the integrity program is not just a host of different actions, procedures, mechanisms to promote integrity, but it has to be sustainable over time, because nowadays a sustainable program is only sustainable if it respects the environment and human rights. You can't have an integrity program for a company that discriminates. We have to talk about integrity in terms of sustainability. We have a compliance program with a whole host of requirements that are fulfilled. But if we're talking about a company that is polluting, well, it's hardly in compliance. So we're talking about a registry of companies. Companies that then aren't really being forthcoming with what they're doing by way of strengthening their integrity, and we assist them through this registry. Now, according to our law, as we see it, when are the measures adequate? You've got the dimension of the business, the economic capacity, scope of that company, and the risks involved. All of these elements have to be taken into account if the integrity program is sufficient. We have the integrity guidelines that we designed for companies. It's a handbook, guidelines for companies to develop their own programs with these essential elements. And here they are, the ones that make up an integrity program, which are highlighted in blue, the most important ones, and the compulsory ones, the ones provided for in law.
The ones that the law says should exist in a program, and that is part of the efforts that we're undertaking to avoid illicit actions. But in addition to all of that, we also include a whole additional slew of elements like risk analysis, reporting mechanisms, how we can protect whistleblowers, investigation and research efforts, due diligence, all of these additional factors which we find strengthen any kind of integrity program. And that's how the RITE is born. RITE being a digital platform that focuses on two main areas. One that looks specifically at registration of businesses and entities that join the platform and add their integrity data. And then there is the toolbox itself, where we have uploaded a whole series of manuals, guides, informative videos for those who don't necessarily have the resources or for someone to organize their compliance system or an integrity system. They can do so regardless. I'm being given a look that tells me that I'm running out of time. So since we're not going to finish all the content of the presentation, I'll say that this is a platform that we built collaboratively, and this is part of a best practice that we implemented. We were able to design forms by dialoguing and talking to other businesses. They said, you should include this. There are providers that don't include XYZ factors. And so within that context, we end up with the platform that I've shown you. So I'm going to leave you with a way to access the platform. But the best thing, or the most important thing, is that there's a baseline, right? We can evaluate over time, and you can ask questions about the characteristics for a particular integrity program, if there's a code of ethics, if there's a gender-based policy, if they include any kind of environmental policy. You can look at all of these different levels of maturity. And as the system goes identifying those, or as the system identifies those factors, you can then decide what you're going to add onto your search in order to further specify your efforts or focus them. And as you'll see at the end of the presentation, you'll get a snapshot of some of the functions that the platform offers, and there's a QR code that you can take a quick picture of, and you can try it out for yourself. The most important thing about this registry is that there is a simulator. So before a business registers, there are 366 businesses already in the system that we can evaluate on a maturity basis. You enter or you register on a voluntary basis. Businesses in Argentina are not obligated to do so. It's an initiative that businesses throughout the provinces can It's a platform that these businesses can register on if they want to. They can put their information out, they can look at other businesses, and there's a ton of audio-visual content that they can use to conduct self-evaluation so that they can see where they lie whenever integrity programs are being designed. And I am totally out of breath. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Deborah Hartford, our expert from Argentina, for delivering her presentation on best practices during our session. We will now move on to our expert from Bolivia. Julia Ross, who will be presenting the best practices, who will be delivering the best practices presentation for Bolivia. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, all. I've just got a pair of brief themes that I would briefly like to address with you all. We have a registration system for managing criminal processes. Yesterday we were talking about generating indicators, statistics, and those indicators and statistics have to be traceable. Our Vice Minister for Transparency has implemented in our policy for the fight against corruption in a decree that we would establish multiple systems for registering and analyzing criminal proceedings. This can be done either through the public ministry or our judicial branch. What we're trying to achieve here is for lawyers who bring corruption cases forward, we want them to be able to register or put these cases online, whether that be through a tablet or any device, so that they can put this on a platform that you'd access through the internet. You can include the personal data of the individual who is putting information online for the case. You can register the process, and all records will therefore be used to generate statistics through which, whether that's internally on the platform itself or through our own transparency office, you can see what stage in the process a particular case is in. They could be gathering evidence. They could be in the middle of a trial. You can see how many sentences have been handed down, how many resolutions have been established. And you get that information in real time, and you've got info on the protection of witnesses like what we discussed yesterday. This is aligned with the indicators that we had addressed during yesterday's conversation. So, this allows us to stay on top of how many corruption or illicit enrichment cases are underway. This will allow us to have real-time data. We'll be able to trace information for the purposes of greater interoperability. We have formatted documentation for people to do follow-up on all members or individuals participating in these processes, etc. The next best practice has to do with the education sector, especially because of our national policy for the fight against corruption. Our ministries have been developing preventive measures, and within the framework of the convention, having a set of preventive measures is fundamental. So we have developed a tool. I don't know if maybe we could put the presentation up, please. And it's just called Transcend. This educational tool has been designed to promote amongst children between the ages of 8 and 12 awareness and understanding of certain values. The tool is set up in, I guess you could say they're almost like 2 seasons, right? We look at Andean territories, or Andean, we use concepts that are related to the highlands in Bolivia in the first session. In the second one, it's the lowlands. In both seasons of this program, we are following the story of Chelo, a young man who's trying to get ahead in life, and he has to overcome challenges along with his friends. So it's a mini series, but it's educational. And the idea is for teachers to take the learning that we get from this show and they can implement that in more general learning. So this has been 100% created by Bolivian professionals using 3D technology. It makes it a lot more interesting to kids. It's been adopted pretty broadly. It's on different social media channels. There is a YouTube channel. They have a TikTok page or profile, their own Facebook page. And this show has been broadcast on multiple national TV channels and now international TV channels. Like, for example, a children's television channel from Mexico, which already decided it would broadcast the second season after having used the first one. The episodes are super short. They're no longer than 5 to 7 minutes each. And we've had 667,000 views and 797,000 post views on social media. This is all part of our transparency office. You can find information on this mini-series through our observatory's webpage. You can watch both the first and second season. The first season was translated to Spanish, Quechua, and Guarani, in addition to Aymara, regional indigenous languages. We think that there will be another season. It'll be pretty short, but this has been a great tool. It was welcomed with open arms. So I would really appreciate it if maybe we could play the trailer. It's like 30 seconds long, so that you can see not just the quality of the product, but you can enjoy a bit of the story. Thank you.
Existe un lugar que es ninguna parte, donde van todos quienes olvidaron las 3 leyes ancestrales, donde una vez sucedió esta historia.
Decir Cantu. Ella es Naira.
¿Dónde estamos?
Este lugar no tiene nombre. Lo llaman ninguna parte.
No entiendo absolutamente nada.
Tranquilo, yo te ayudaré. Te llevaré al litoral del ocaso eterno para que puedas trascender y llegar al reino de la calma.
Muchísimas gracias. También es una
Thank you so much. So again, it's a mini series that we can share with anyone who might want to watch. The episodes are so short that you can breeze through the whole thing really quickly. And we can also share the pedagogical guidelines so that maybe teachers can implement this in the classroom. It's been well adopted. The themes that the show touches on are actually quite profound, despite it being a children's show. Thank you so much. Thank you to our expert, Julia Rios from Bolivia. I'm sure that all the members of the committee of experts, we are all riveted. We would love to keep watching the show. Thank you so much, and congratulations. That really is a best practice.
Muchas gracias. Tenemos una
Thank you so much. We're dealing with a bit of a technical situation. I think that maybe the coffee break might be in order. So let's take 5 minutes to get this taken care of. So if you'd like, you can step into the other room. We'll be back post haste. We just have a quick technical issue to resolve with the platform.
I'm your football-obsessed best man.
When all eyes are on you, my eyes are glued to the game. And if you didn't bundle your home and auto insurance, well, all of this could be tough to tackle. So get Allstate.
It's built for Apple Intelligence, from the inside out. It has our most powerful Pro chip and our most advanced camera system with an intuitive new camera control. Plus thinner borders for our largest ever display. The next generation of iPhone starts now. This is iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence. A new powerful private personal intelligence system deeply integrated into your phone and across your apps to help you get things done effortlessly. You can describe a photo you took years ago, and Apple Intelligence will find it. It'll summarize an email thread to give you the most important information, and it gives Siri a richer understanding of you.
Sí, muy buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. We're going to resume with our session on best practices now. Sadly, the Kudo platform issue remains unresolved. Since we have an agenda to get through, however, and a limited amount of time to do so, we've decided to just go through presentations from those who are present in the room. Tomorrow morning, so long as the Kudo platform issue is resolved, then those who would have presented today will have a chance to do so in the morning. So, to continue with the rest of the presentations on our agenda, we'll go with whoever's physically in the room. Next up would be Chile. We have a presentation to be delivered by two experts, one who is in the room with us, Madam Karen Jara Cisterna, and our expert who, was present with us remotely. I don't know, would you rather deliver your presentation tomorrow and you might be able to do so alongside your colleague, or I would rather deliver the presentation today and then she can go tomorrow. Well, each country only gets 10 minutes is the thing. So shall we leave it for tomorrow, or would you be willing to deliver the entire presentation on your own? Just tomorrow then. Okay, so then we'll put Chile down for tomorrow morning, given that part of the presentation is to be delivered virtually. Guatemala would be next. To deliver a presentation, this would be by Mr. Jorge Calderón. We give the floor to the expert.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta. Ahí está.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, fellow experts. It's a pleasure for me to talk about the progress made by our current President Arevalo in the fight against corruption. I'm Daniel Calderon. I'm the Director of Strengthening Institutional Reports and Detection of Problems in our financial system, and I would briefly like to present the framework within which to address the restructuring we're undertaking to address the problems that we have faced. So, at the beginning of this Mississippi session, Mr. Ian Mitchell said that the phenomenon of corruption erodes governance, it hampers development, it keeps institutions from fulfilling their roles, their mission, and underserves citizens. Those aren't empty words. At the beginning of this year, Guatemala is going a serious institutional crisis, stemming from the fact that that corruption has become widespread and systemic, and it had jeopardized the democratic transition, and the president was sworn in at 12 p.m. So the context in which this happened was quite thorny, quite complex. Guatemala was beset by corruption. We took office, and the first half of the year, $266 million worth of monies lost to corruption. So we tried to tackle this corruption problem. We see this again as a structural widespread problem. And when we started working on this, we took full stock of the extent of the problem and realized that perhaps we were approaching it incorrectly. We were able to uncover a number of cases of corruption. And the truth is, with the exit of the international group against impunity, then, well, the state, as a result of that work, had actually been strengthened. So the punitive practices did not seem to be thoroughly addressing the problem, and the Commission Against Corruption decided to tackle this problem, to approach it from a different tack. We've been hearing about the Chilean model and the Mexican model, on which we modeled ours, and the national system against corruption of Mexico that managed to coordinate a number of different institutions, bringing them all together in coordination against corruption perpetrated by different parties involved in that corruption. This has been a rough and tumble process. In society in Guatemala, not to say all of Latin American society, but it only seems that fighting corruption is something that comes to the fore when we reveal large-scale cases. And one of the big challenges that we face is precisely to change that outlook, that approach. So we started to engage in dialogue and to engage citizens, to bring citizens into decision-making about fighting corruption through delegate counselors, about which we will speak later when we talk about the different legislative initiatives we've adopted and different policies throughout this overall process. This is done digitally and in person, engaging civil society and the citizenry overall. And the office that I head up, we started to receive reports. Now, the public ministry, the Office of Attorney General, oftentimes would close these cases, and society oftentimes making available data on cases, and rather than just closing the cases and locking those figures away, is what enables society to actually track acts of corruption and report on them. So that's the importance of engaging the citizenry in putting this mechanism together. Now we have this code of ethics, which, as we will see, has a probity body that ensures that the ethics code is not just dead letter, but actually is something that is brought to good effect. Now, as we were hearing, that citizen engagement is something that is broad and cuts across all walks of life. It's very important for citizens to be able to fully take part in this process. That's necessary for the measure to actually be effective. And to that end, we engage civil society through this figure of the counselors, and we put together this advisory body that advises the President of the Republic and all the different bodies that have a hand in decision-making on fighting corruption. Now, this delegate counselor body has representatives from indigenous groups, two from the academia, 2 from civil society, and 2 from the business sector. The dialogue with citizens is something that we do on an ongoing basis as we put together each project, one of which is the Code of Ethics. More than 90% of all the government agencies have their own updated Code of Ethics with essential elements that citizens had a hand in designing. And this probity board that receives reports about ethical violations or acts of corruption within the executive, this is a prior instance prior to the administrative level. It doesn't necessarily have to lead to criminal procedures. It is a prior stage for bringing disciplinary action and to receive reports on ethics as a prior opportunity for improvement. This includes risk management and all the different reports that are submitted are inputs for us to come up with a system with which we can attack the root causes and deal with that whack-a-mole problem of solving, smashing down one problem and others popping up. Now, these probity boards taken together are an integrity network in which there is an exchange of good practices, because trends are that corruption trends you see in one ministry play out across other ministries, and then any success made in one probity board can be used by other probity boards facing similar problems, and they can learn from what was done to solve the problem, and so on through the different boards. And this is something that citizens and the community and the press avail themselves of to follow through on reports of corruption. That concludes my presentation, Madam Chair. I thank the expert from Guatemala for your presentation on good practices. Now we're going to hear from Guyana. Madam Joan Bond.
Adelante, experta.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, experts. It's a pleasure to deliver this presentation on behalf of Guyana. My presentation will be on the Conflict of Interest Code. And this code was developed about 20 years ago by the Audit Office of Guyana, which is a constitutional body. So a little bit about the Audit Office before I speak to the code. So the Audit Office, as I mentioned, was established by the Constitution of Guyana, which at the same time established the Auditor General. And the Constitution speaks to the functions of the Auditor General. And that main function is to audit the public accounts of Guyana. And this includes the accounts of the National Assembly, as well as the courts in Guyana. This entity, the Audit Office, has full autonomy, and so does the Auditor General. So it's an independent body. And this function and what they do is further strengthened by the Audit Act of 2005, which also speaks to the independence of the Auditor General. And so there's a clear intention in both the Constitution and the Audit Act that there must be independence and autonomy of both the Auditor General and the Audit Office. And it's because of this that a code was developed to ensure the independence, the integrity, and the public confidence in this office and the person who heads the office. The overview of the code. Now, the code is simply a manual for the employees and staff of the audit office, and it sets out standards and guidelines and the processes which may be applied to real or perceived situations of conflict of interest. And the code requires each staff to make certain declarations. So they have to disclose any outside involvement that may lead to a conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest, and they may also disclose financial interests. Reasons for the code. Prior to 2004, the auditing of public accounts in Guyana was governed by an ordinance, and this ordinance was enforced prior to independence. And though it would have received some amendments, it was not until 2004 that legal reform was done in Guyana to identify gaps and to address those gaps. And so one of the things that the reform did was to not only have a new legislation setting out the functions of the office, but it also spoke directly to conflict of interest and the importance of ethical conduct, and it empowered the Auditor General to make regulations. And it's because of that that we crafted the Conflict of Interest Code in addition to other standards. And so the audit office and its employees, they have an obligation to maintain independence of the office. And it's not just about what they do, but it's also the perception. So it's about the opinions, the conclusion, the judgments, and the recommendations must be seen as impartial. And the employees must ensure they maintain the trust and confidence of the members of society. And so overall, the code seeks to assist the staff in measuring whether or not their personal affairs could or do place them in a situation of conflict of interest with their responsibilities of the audit office, and to provide direction on how such conflict can be resolved. And as I mentioned, the code itself is grounded in law. So the Audit Act speaks to the Auditor General on conflict of interest, and then the regulations that are made pursuant to the Act mentions the code. It also speaks to an oath of professional conduct. Now, the design of this code. The code is based on international standards, and you can see on the screen the IFAC standard, as well as the INTOSAI standards. And staff are required to, in addition to follow the code, they must adhere to these standards. The code itself is written in simplified language. It's only about 5 pages long, and it's make good use of examples. So it's very user-friendly because, as mentioned, it's for every staff to use and be able to understand. The structure is a simple structure. It sets out the objectives and principles. So it tells the staff what is the objective of the code, which I mentioned, the overall purpose. It sets out the principles that they should be guided by. It speaks to reducing, eliminating conflict of interest. It speaks to the type of assets that must be cleared and what may not be declared. It also mentions outside activities. So what kind of activities should they not be involved in? Basically anything that could possibly compromise their role. It speaks to gifts and relationships. So gifts are prohibited in certain types of relationships. It guides the staff on confidentiality. So what information can you disclose and how to use the information? So the information that they receive, because it is so important to what's happening in Guyana, they should not misuse that information for their own personal gain. And whatever they come across, they must keep in confidence. It also speaks to misuse of property. So the property of the audit office should not be misused. It must not be used for their own personal use. And it speaks to non-compliance. So if you don't adhere by the code, there's consequences, there's sanctions. And this slide, and I just want to touch on the assets. So as I mentioned, it gives the staff a clear overview when it comes to assets, which is very important because oftentimes persons may not know what is it they must disclose. So the code goes into detail, and it's one of the more detailed provisions in terms of assets. So the assets, for example, that would not be exempt is listed there, like real property. Assets that are beneficially owned, which are not exempt and are administered at arm's length. And then it speaks to assets which are exempt from declaration. So they don't have to declare things like pension rights, cash and deposits. And with respect to gifts, I would just briefly touch on this. This also is very detailed in the code because persons may not know, okay, yes, don't accept gifts or don't avoid certain types of relationships, but there's clear guidance given because there may be some misunderstanding with respect to can you accept a birthday cake, can you accept money? If it's your birthday, can they send you a card? So it clearly states what is prohibited. So it's clear what you cannot accept and the types of relationship that you should not engage in. So for example, accepting gifts except for the routine catering which the entity, which is the audit office, may provide for its own employees. So let's say you have a meeting and there's catering, that's something you can partake in, but outside of that, you don't accept, right? Just to make it clear. Makes it clear, special treatment must not be given to any entity. So it doesn't matter whether it's the office of the president or simply a ministry, to no one. And I will just go to implementation. So the code is implemented before any audit commences. And during the onboarding stage, a staff receives their letter of appointment along with the code as well as the audit standards. And this is set out in law that when a staff comes on, they must receive the code. And the staff must then sign a declaration in relation to the conflict of interest, declaring that they have read it, understood it, and are prepared to abide fully with the provisions of the code, and of course, accept sanctions for not abiding. And the staff, they're required to disclose in confidence any activity or financial interest which may lead to a conflict of interest. And the Auditor General is there to provide direction and guidance for resolving cases of potential conflicts of interest. With respect to challenges and lessons, Guyana is a very small society, so one of the challenges we have is that everybody knows everybody. Persons might be related, so you might be auditing a relative's account. So that's a challenge that we have. So we found the code to be very useful. Like I said, it's been around for almost 20 years, and it has helped to maintain professional conduct and ethical standards. And it is an integral part. It's part of the culture of the audit office. And it has really helped the staff to understand how they should conduct their business, what they should and what they should not do. So there's a standard that they all can aspire to. Of course, the expected outcome by having this code is to ensure the credibility and integrity of the audit process, and the office is not compromised by conflict of interest situations involving staff. And this is what we expect, and this is what we have seen because it's a constitutional office. So you always want to maintain that high standard. With respect to monitoring.
A la experta, si le quedan 30 segundos.
Yes, so I'll wrap up now. I'm at the end. So the Auditor General is responsible for the implementation and monitoring of this code. There's also the Parliamentary Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly, which has oversight over the Audit Office. And of course, there's the Integrity Commission, which the Auditor General has to make declarations to. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. I thank the expert from Guyana, Ms. Joan Boom, for presenting on your best practices. Next, we're going to hear from Haiti. This presentation will be offered by Hans Jack, to whom we give the floor now.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, Technical Secretariat, distinguished members of the different delegations. The Republic of Haiti is honored to participate in the 42nd meeting of the Committee of Experts from MESISIC to, among other things, present recent progress made in preventing and fighting against corruption. The creation of the Unit for the Fight Against Corruption, the main Haitian public institution seeking to implement the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption, is a clear sign of the Republic of Haiti's firm commitment to fight against the scourge of corruption. The institution celebrated its 20th anniversary just some days ago on September 8th, 2024. And during the ceremony, which was attended by many of Haiti's highest authorities, the state renewed its commitment to put the fight against corruption at the heart of its national priorities. This commitment is further shown by our renewed pledge to support actions of the ULCC, which has already submitted 94 investigation reports and 125 requests for failure to declare assets to the courts. Just a week ago, 7 investigation reports stemming from thorough investigative processes implicating political figures, including ex-ministers and directors general, were submitted to authorities to hold those individuals accountable for their corrupt acts. In recent years, while the ULCC has focused on strengthening its repressive actions, many awareness-raising and prevention efforts have been undertaken. One of our more recent efforts, which we proposed to this committee of experts, is the creation of integrity clubs in public and private schools throughout the country. Haiti, through its principal anti-corruption body, launched on November 20th of 2023 its first Integrity Club, which seeks to embed our fight against corruption in the long term by promoting the emergence of a new generation of citizens that are better informed concerning this scourge and are committed to rejecting it. We are sure that establishing such integrity clubs will lead to a culture of transparency and integrity and will instill in our youth, those who are the future leaders to be called on for our country, we will be instilling in them fundamental principles such as the respect for public and collective property and accountability, introducing structured and civic debates in schools about the harms, consequences, and impacts of corruption on society in general and on the young people's future, aligns with Haiti's efforts to implement the different recommendations that were enshrined in international evaluation reports, specifically Resolution 9/8, titled Promoting Anti-Corruption Education, Awareness, and Training, adopted during the Conference of the States Parties in December 2021. Currently, Haiti has 2 integrity clubs. There is the one for the National High School in Pétionville, which held 2 excellent public presentations on topics related to fraud and accountability in school, respectively on International Anti-Corruption Day and at the Law Fair held on June 24th of this year. These presentations were very successful and caused quite a stir. There was a lot of enthusiasm for them. The goal is to extend this to other schools in different cities in order to restore security efforts made by the government, thanks to the commitment of Haiti's national police, armed forces, and multinational security support mission. In addition to introducing integrity clubs in Haitian schools, the ULCC has reviewed the law of March 12, 2014 on the prevention and repression of corruption. Our findings, presented on August 29th, 2024 in Port-au-Prince, of multiple sectors, will allow Haiti to evaluate legal weaknesses, its alignment with international legal instruments that Haiti is party to, and more importantly, we'll be able to propose amendments to strengthen Haiti's legal framework in our fight against corruption. This review also sheds light on the gaps that we have in terms of implementing international recommendations made by groups like Messisic's Committee of Experts. The ULCC will submit a copy of this review to Messisic's legal department in March of as promised in March of 2024. Given the relevance of all these matters, Haiti submits the establishment of integrity clubs in schools and the review of national anti-corruption legislation as best practices in our efforts to prevent and effectively fight against corruption. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias.
I thank the expert from Haiti for your presentation on best practices. It's 4:57. Given that we should conclude by 5, we don't have time for another presentation. There are 2 presentations then that we'll have to do tomorrow that we didn't get to today. We only have interpretation available until 5 p.m. today. So then we will resume tomorrow. So we're going to hear from the ones who will be presenting remotely, and the 2 here in the room who will be able to present tomorrow, the Dominican Republic, my country, and Trinidad and Tobago. I apologize, but we didn't have enough time to get to it today. So tomorrow is the last day of these sessions of the 42nd meeting of the Committee of Experts. So again, tomorrow we will start with those best practice presentations that we didn't finish today, after which we will continue with our agenda, what's slated for tomorrow, the draft reports for Colombia and Grenada, that is reviewing those and other matters, and then the consideration and approval of the minutes of this meeting, item 8 on the agenda. So I thank you all very much. We prevail upon you, please, to be here tomorrow morning at 9:30 sharp. Thank you and enjoy your evening.
Gracias. Gracias a ustedes.